yesterday, but it certainly has repercussions on the present and on the future. A former convict turned chef turned mercenary group boss. He fights a war, leads a revolt, fails, and is finally killed in a plane crash, or so the reports say. Yevgeny Prigozhin's story is nothing less than a Bollywood action thriller. The only difference being that this is real life, and unlike in films, we might never get to know what exactly happened. Was it really a plane accident, or as theories suggest, was this a pre-planned, cold-blooded murder? Russian authorities have claimed that the chief of the mercenary group Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, was on a plane that crashed in Western Russia. As per Russian media, it was a private plane owned by Prigozhin himself. Now, Russia claims that the jet was flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg and that 10 people were on board the plane, including 3 crew members. 8 bodies were found at the crash site. Wagner chief's name was on the list of those who were declared as traveling on that plane, along the key Wagner commander, Dmitry Utkin. Wagner-linked Telegram channel Grey Zone claimed that the jet was shot down by the Russian military without providing evidence. Interestingly, after his failed mutiny against good friend and ally Vladimir Putin in June this year, observers had begun warning of consequences. Now, those who closely watch developments in Russia call Yevgeny dead man walking. After the news of his alleged death, American President Joe Biden said that he's not surprised, clearly hinting that the Russian president was behind the crash.
First of all, it will not come as a surprise if Yevgeny Prigozhin, the boss of Wagner, has now finally been dealt with by the Russian state. It was more of a surprise that he was allowed to survive for so long after mounting this challenge to Moscow by taking his men and marching on the Kremlin, looking for a reckoning with the Ministry of Defense. However, he will have known since then that there was a target on his back, and President Putin needed to set an example. You cannot have Yevgeny Prigozhin setting a dangerous precedent by mounting a mutiny and actually surviving it.
I was asked about this by you. I said I'd be careful what I drink, what I wrote in. I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised. There's not much that happens when Russia is Putin not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer. I've been working out for the last hour and a half.
Wir kennen dieses Muster in Russlands, in Putins Russland. Todesfälle und dubiose Selbstmorde, Fensterabstürze, die alle letztendlich unaufgeklärt bleiben. Das unterstreicht ein diktatorisches Machtsystem, das auf Gewalt gebaut ist, kennt auch nach innen und nach außen nur Gewalt.
Всякому, кто что-то посмеет, на что-то покуситься, голову оторвут быстро и незамедлительно. В этом смысле Путин выбрал из разных неприятных вариантов наименее неприятный. Он показал, что ситуацию контролирует, что силовые ресурсы на его стороне, что всякий, кто посмеет, тот получит.
All right, let me take this across to my guest tonight. I'm joined by Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow at the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. Dr. Swasti Rao, welcome, good evening. Thank you so much for talking with Mirror Now. This, of course, came as a shocking news to the entire world when we got reports yesterday that there has been a plane crash and that the Wagner chief was on board and he might be dead. But going by the record, the proof, the stories that go around in Russia, we have seen such cases earlier, and therefore a lot of experts, observers, theorists suggest that this might not be just an accident. What is your analysis of it?
Yes, indeed. This has just provided another twist to a very unbelievable chain of events that have happened in Russia after the mutiny broke out. First things first, you see, in 2019, Yevgeny Prigozhin was reported dead in a plane crash in Africa. just to find out 3 days later that he's alive. Okay? So I think there is reason why the Russian authorities, the MOD, Putin himself, or Alexander Lukashenko, where the Wagner had relocated, have not really come out with an official statement. The only official statement that we have so far is from I think the Federal Air Transport Authority in Russia, that has said that, yes, somebody called Yevgeny Prigozhin has died. Whether it is the one Yevgeny Prigozhin that we all have in mind or not is something that is still wrapped under mystery. So I think we should be, sort of a bit mindful of the fact that he's very much capable of pulling off a stunt like that. He's a man who holds lots of passports. He's known to keep changing his appearances. So I would, wait for this debris to settle and then see what is being confirmed later. Having said that, the other thing, which is that if you connect it to other dots, which is that, lot of Prigozhin and Wagner sympathizers have been losing their lives and are dismissed in Russia. The list is really long. So a lot of ultra-nationalists, for example, like General Surovikin, he was dismissed and he was known to be somewhere in knowledge of the mutiny that happened. Then, Igor Girkin has been arrested. Of course, Dugina is dead in a car crash. Tatarsky is also dead. Prigozhin and Dmitry Uchkin are also reportedly dead. And there are also a number of other ultra-nationalists and hardliners who were Wagner sympathizers who are no longer there. They're either detained or dismissed or dead. So I think if you connect these dots all together, you do get a convincing argument of, why Prigozhin could have been a problem, for Putin, especially after what had happened. But unless something really, crystallized or tangible comes out, I would hold my horses and I would wait for some kind of official confirmation.
Will that ever come, Dr. Swasti Rao? Will that ever come from the Kremlin, from Vladimir Putin's office? Will that confirmation ever come that, in fact, his once friend, ally turned foe is now no more?
I totally agree. And then I think in one of my statements, I also said that I would let the debris settle because, there are certain important things that have unfolded simultaneously. For example, the Wagnerites are really angry. They have been releasing videos that, something might happen in reaction. It's a very Prigozhin fashion. I mean, if you remember, Prigozhin was bringing up videos after videos to call out against Sergei Shoigu and Gerasimov, etc. So we have seen a kind of a replay of that from the Wagner fighters themselves. Then secondly, what makes it really interesting is that just 2 days ago, United States for the first time asked its citizens in Belarus to leave, the place. So it is said that, if you go by the discussion that is happening in Telegram, perhaps the U.S. intelligence had picked up some chatter about what was to come and wanted to evacuate their citizens. Then similarly, now we have more news coming that Belarus had indeed cut down internet services in areas where Wagner strongholds were located. Similarly, I said that, both the video of the private, this jet, on which Prigozhin was flying, it is definitely shot at, okay? So whether it is happening from the inside or externally, something that we will have to wait and watch for. But all these things do not add up to a very benign theory. It does not really add up to a very benign accident. It does add up to something, that we will have to extrapolate in case the official confirmation does not arise. But like I said, that in 2019, since a similar situation had happened in Africa and this man just resurfaced, so for that reason alone, I would kind of hold my horses and wait for a couple of days to pass and see if Mr. Prigozhin is resurfacing somewhere in Africa or someplace. But nonetheless, like I said, that the things that sort of put together, a credible explanation do not seem to be very clean yet.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is that so far we have confirmation of only 8 bodies being found out from there. So we'll have to really see what comes out of that investigation. But, in case this whole news and this whole information comes out to be true, it's proven to be true that he is in fact dead. How do you think this would affect Russia and Russian politics? Because here's a man who was considered extremely close to the president of Russia, to the point where they were enjoying meals together. He was called Putin's chef. And then he, of course, was helping him in the war as a mercenary group. And then he turned into a rebel who tried to lead a mutiny that failed. How do you think that would really affect, the citizens, the Russians per se, because they considered him a national hero?
That's right. That's right. I totally agree. In fact, I was just watching some of the discussions that are happening on Telegram channels. And yes, there are people who are hailing him as a hero. Alexander Dugin, for instance, was considered to be, by, of course, the media channels, not by Putin himself, but he's considered to be the philosophical inspiration to Putin's idea of Novorossiya, etc. So Alexander Dugin, whose daughter was killed in that car crash some months ago, so he was hailing Prigozhin as a man who lived and died like a lion, etc. Number one. Number two, when we saw that mutiny unfolding from Rostov-on-Don, a few months ago, the residents of Rostov-on-Don seemed to be absolutely in support, of the Wagner mutineers. So there is no doubt about the fact that there is a certain section of Russian population, there is a certain section of Russian FSB and intelligence, and the Secret Service, where Prigozhin and I must mention the Russian oligarchs as well. So there is a certain section of all these people, that from where Prigozhin did enjoy a bit of support, and I think that was the reason why he did what he did, because he had confidence to pull it off. Okay, it's not easy to just raise your voice and in that manner, against the defense minister and the chief of the the army staff, Valery Gerasimov. So obviously he did enjoy that. What it leads us to, and the question that you're asking, is that if his death is indeed true, what happens? Yes, it is not great news, because for sure the Wagnerites would be very angry. He really had, despite all the crudeness that he had and all his crude ways, he was very popular among these, special services and the fighters, etc. And for all you may know, some of them maybe Putin has already found somebody to replace him. We do not really know. But we do know is that it is not great news, because I don't know what these 25,000 fighters would now do without their their head, without their leader. So I think this is something, and then just to make matters worse, I need to mention that in Ukraine, so by the way, today is the Ukraine's National Day, and what Ukraine has done is that Ukraine has just pulled off a very unbelievable amphibious launch in Crimea, which is, of course, Russian territory according to Russia, and they've just pulled it off. So what I'm saying is that this is in some way a kind of a morale boost for the Ukrainians. Why? Because let's not forget that it was Prigozhin and the Wagner that actually gave Russia the Battle of Bakhmut, that won the Battle of Bakhmut for Russia. So with them gone, if at all it's true, I'm still not sure, but then let's imagine if it's true and both these men are dead, then it would be some sort of a morale boost for the Ukrainians, and it might just show in how their counteroffensive is going, which is not going very well right now.
And so, Swasti Rao, how do you see this panning out now? Do you see a change in military tactics by Vladimir Putin? Do you see Russia further weakening on ground in the war? The fact that Ukrainians might get an ego boost and might get a morale boost from this. How do you see this war really moving forward now, considering, like you said, hypothetically, that the Wagner chief is dead?
Well, a couple of things. As to how will there be a change in the Russian tactic, we have to understand that in the course of the last 1 year, we have seen the Russians adapt, to the challenges that were thrown at the Russian side. So they have really sort of, come a long way in the drone warfare and the unmanned, vehicle systems, etc. They have also been able to fortify, the first and the second lines of defense very doggedly. And from the Ukrainian side, even though the Ukrainians are winning back village by village, their territory village by village, but if you put it in the larger picture, it doesn't really add up to much success to the counteroffensive per se, because the thing is that the Russians have, created the first line of defense, which is completely mined and with a lot of trenches, and the Ukrainians are still trying to look for a vulnerable point to break through that first line of defense so that they are able to, come in and then ramp up pressure on Russia. So apart from certain points, in that long axis of the counteroffensive, it has happened, but it is nothing that is, really tangibly, palpably important right now. So for the Ukrainians, there was already some sort of a morale boost with the news of the F-16s finally making their way into Ukraine after Denmark and Netherlands. Norway has become the third country to say that they would be sending F-16s.
Yeah.
Although the F-16 would not have any immediate impact on the counteroffensive because it is not likely to be deployed before the end of this year. And if at all you would see any impact of those F-16s, it would come early next year and later. But having said that, the fact that the Western Alliance is kind of united in giving Ukraine all these, weapons that they were earlier considered red lines, number one. Number two, the fact that Ukraine was able to pull off, not just they have been sort of improving their deep strikes within Russia. I mean, a couple of days ago, or I think maybe it was yesterday, when the Ukrainian side claimed that they have attacked some S-400, site in Russia. So I think it's still not confirmed. But what I'm saying is that the Ukrainian ability to deep strike into Russia is improving. And now, the one Russian fighter, that group that actually delivered the Battle of Bakhmut, the victory of Bakhmut to the Russians, gone. It could be the much-needed morale boost. Now, whether it would translate into that real action on the ground and the battlefront is something I think we all would need, we will all need to see how that unravels. It would be very premature. Like I said,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not even willing to sort of push the fact that Prigozhin could be really dead for, 3 or 4 days later, he might just come up again. That because this is precisely what happened in 2019. Nonetheless, so I think it's just a very interesting situation, and we should really try not to get involved in a lot of conspiracy
Well, if,
theories
Dr. Swasti Rao, if he does pop up a few days later, I think it's going to just add to this seemingly Bollywood thriller that is really playing out in the Russia-Ukraine war. But I'll wrap it up here. Dr. Swasti Rao, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your perspective on the latest development in Russia with the Wagner chief being apparently dead. We'll have to get that confirmation from Kremlin. Whether it comes or not, we'll really have to see.